Hey everyone, welcome back. So today got something a little different, something I've never tried before. This John Deere 7020 right here has fuel injector pump issues. Let's see, this pump's model number is JDC, which is a model number that's very uncommon, and I can't seem to find it anywhere on the internet. But from what I have found, the problem that this is having is most likely caused by one of the internal seals coming apart and getting chewed up inside there and spat out. So what's happening is this is the fuel return line, which is taken off currently. There's a little check valve in here, and after running this for a little while, it'll just die, and I can't get it to start again unless I take apart the injector pump system and bleed it. And what I found is every time I check, there's a small bit of dissolved plasticky looking stuff stuck in the check valve of this fuel return. So I'm going to take this off and see if my theory is correct, and if it's not, there's got to be something in there. Maybe some rust got pulled in. There was a really bad fuel filter on this tractor a while ago that was filthy and awful. It's possible that some rust from the fuel tank got pulled in and put through there, but we're just going to see. So first things first, I'm just going to take this off here. I'm not entirely sure what all is needed to get it off. I might have to pull off this front case right here so that I can get these bolts out that are holding it in. I'm not sure. I hope not, because this case is bolted on behind all these pulleys back here, so that would be no fun at all to get off. We'll see. Anyway, we will see. Alright, so let's see what we got here. So far I have not found the source of the clog that keeps appearing in here. I'm going to keep going until I do. And I should probably mention that I don't have a full understanding of how these pumps work, just a rudimentary understanding that I've gained more recently. But as I go, I'm learning a little more. For example, that C there indicates that this is a clockwise turning unit, not counterclockwise, because counterclockwise would be marked CC. Anyway, I'm definitely gonna put this in my ultrasonic cleaner with some diesel to get it all cleaned off once I get it all taken apart. But let's continue taking it apart for now. Okay, so my camera ran out of battery there, and I didn't notice until after I finished pulling some stuff out. So what I pulled out was this shaft here. Let's see, came straight out of here. You have to pull these little tiny rubber seals off the end of it, and then it'll just slide right on out. When that slides out, this, which was hinged upon it like that, so that it could tilt forward and backwards when the throttle moved forward and backward, like that. This came right out right after that. And you can see this thing has got quite a little bit of rust on it. I don't think that's what was necessarily getting clogged in it, because what I was seeing getting clogged in it was tiny shards. It looked like a dissolved seal or something that got all hard and cracked and then broke to pieces and sucked up into the fuel pump. But we'll see. Eventually, we'll see what was causing it. So, for now, I'm going to keep taking this apart. Okay, so this is a 7/16 12-point socket that you need right here. Get this off. That was in there real tight. That's actually not bad. No, that's really not bad at all. Okay, well, that's off. Alright, so all three of these were stuck, didn't want to come out, so I took it over to the vise, clamped it in, and I was able to use this, what is it, 1 1/8 inch socket to break these loose here, and I was able to use an impact screwdriver here to break this on the top loose. So if you're doing one of these, you'll probably have to do that as well. I only didn't film it because they were so stuck that I was convinced it wasn't going to work, and then it did, so sorry I didn't film it for you guys, but that's the way it goes. Well, when that came out, a lot of brown sludge dumped out with it, so it's just one more indication that that was pretty dirty down there. Okay, there. I was turning that the wrong way. I wasn't sure exactly how this held on, but now I think I can tell. Yeah. Okay. Okay, and it looks like there's a tiny clip in there. Okay, so my camera ran out of battery again. Let me kind of show you what I did there to get this off. So both of these threaded out. This one has threads inside of it that, see, that this was threaded into. This little adjuster right here was threaded straight through there. And this cap was on the top. Once I removed that, this piece here became free. It was sitting in there about like that, inside this tube here, and I had to slide this out so that this also could slide out. So far that's what I've done, and that should be all you missed. Now, of course, I'm going to need to get the inside of the pump out of the pump housing. And I know that can be kind of a hard job to do, so let's see what we can do for that. Alright, so once again I did this off camera because I wasn't really sure exactly how I was going to get it to work, and it was much easier to just do it off camera. So what I did to get these apart was I heated up the housing here, and I took a hardwood dowel that I had because it was the hardest thing that I had that wasn't hard enough to damage the metal here. Put it inside, and well, I put it inside from the other side, but this is still hot, so I'm not going to pick it up. Put the dowel in, tapped it with a hammer a few times, and this thing popped right out. So it wasn't so terrible, even though this thing was pretty good and stuck. Okay, now that I've cooled it down enough to touch, I'm going to dump out the weight basket here. This is the weight retainer. Let's take a look at it. It's got quite a bit of rust on it, as you can see. That's no good at all. I can clean that off and get it put back together nicely, and look at that. There is no seal on the back of it. There's supposed to be a plastic seal that goes all the way around here. That is what must have dissolved and was getting pulled into the fuel return line. There's all the weights here. Looks like there's more little bits of seal in here, so I'm definitely going to have to take this piece off. Okay, so when this goes back on, I'm going to have to line it back up the way it was before. And as you can see, the way that it is currently lined up, this line on the top of this brass piece here is lined up with the nub sticking out of this shaft. Okay, so that'll be easy enough to get back on. Look at that. There's supposed to be a seal under here too, I assume. And that's all that's left of it right there. And it's, yep, it's breaking apart. That's exactly what I had expected to find. Well, okay, that's our problem, that's for sure. This looks like it's more rust here. I'm not going to take this part apart because I don't want to have to get that back together. It's kind of complicated. I'm going to be satisfied tearing it down just this far, and now I got to clean the parts, and I've got an ultrasonic cleaner for that job, so I think that's what I'll do next. Alright, so I've let these parts soak for a while in the diesel fuel over the weekend. Alright, and done a little research on the best way to put these things back together. I'm going to move this out of the way here. Apologies if my setup here looks kind of messy and disorganized, because it is. But this should at least prove to you that if someone like me can put this pump back together, you can too. So, first thing I need to do is get these back together. I've cleaned the actual surface rust. Let's see if I can focus the camera. Come on. Doesn't want to focus. Well, you can see there's a little rust on here. Most of it I've cleaned off and got this pretty well clean. There's a little tiny bit of pitting on the surface in various areas, but I think I got rid of all of the active rust. Used some Scotch-Brite and cleaned it off of there, and then rinsed it in diesel real good. So the first thing I got to do is get this weight retaining basket hooked back up to this that goes underneath the weight retaining basket. And let's see, the weight retaining basket, there's a mark right there, and on this it corresponds with this timing mark. Not focusing again. On this piece here, it corresponds with that timing mark right there. So that this goes together like that. Oh, sorry, I got it upside down. This goes together like that, to the best of my knowledge. And now, this rubber seal right here that I've got a little dirt on and now I have to clean it off. Okay, this rubber seal right here has to stretch over all of those points. This tiny little hole here has to stretch over that and cover it. And it will hold these two pieces together tightly because it'll be stretching over both pieces here. So I'm going to try to do that, and I have a feeling it's going to take a really long time. So let's get started. Okay, well that was absolutely miserable. It's sort of kind of on there. It might pop off if I'm not careful, but I think it's on for now. So naturally, these three nubs need to fit through here and plug through these holes, which is also going to be miserable. Something I'm going to do, I'm going to throw this back in the ultrasonic cleaner for a minute because that ultrasonic cleaner can heat parts up. I'm going to warm this up a little bit, and that might make this rubber a little more supple, which could very well make this process a lot less painful. So give that a shot real quick, see what happens. Okay, so this might be a little bit hard for you to see, so I'm going to explain it before I do it. So I'm going to take all four of these plungers here with the, it says the chamfered side has to face inwards, so that would be this side. In the manual, you got to install the plungers into each of these holes here, and it has to be in such a way where the two short plungers are opposite each other and the two long plungers are opposite each other. And then each one of these needs to be installed into one of these slots, and all of this needs to be done under the surface of diesel fuel. So I've got a coffee can full here of clean diesel fuel. Going to drop the pump in there. Let it fill up with fuel, tilt it a little bit to make sure that any air bubbles escape. So I assume the reason you're doing this is because if you don't, it'll be hard to get fuel fed into there when you put this thing back together. Alright, so I'm going to install this one first. Over here. See if I can find the hole deep under this diesel fuel here. There we go, sliding in. They say don't force these in either. If they don't want to go in, you gotta clean either the plunger itself or the bore into which you're inserting it in order to ensure that you're not forcing anything and getting something stuck. Alright, that one went in. So now I got those two long plungers opposite each other. Now the two short plungers. And I could tell which end of the plunger faced out because there's a wear on the end where it was wearing against the part that rides out here. So face the wear end out. Okay. These ones are going to be extra hard to get back in there. It's really hard to fit it all the way in there with my finger, not fitting in this slot. There, I got it. Okay, that one is in. Now lastly, got this one. Okay, as you can see, every time I push this one in, it pushes out the other one. I'm guessing that's because the fuel in there is pressurized and not wanting to come out. So I'm going to start putting in these rollers here, and then eventually everything will compress as it is supposed to. Okay, got one in. Got the other one in. Now I'm going to try to compress these two plungers towards each other so that I can get their rollers in. Alright, and that pushed out the other two plungers just a little bit, which is fine. It's not going to hurt anything. Nope, that didn't. Get back here. Okay. Plunger's out again. Right there. Okay. Okay, now this one in. Alright, it's in. All the plungers are in place. There's fluid behind each one of them. So that part is complete. Alright, so I checked back to my video footage, and this cam ring goes in with the pointer pointing clockwise, not counterclockwise. If you flip it over, it's got a counterclockwise one, but it points clockwise. That's one of the reasons I wanted to film this. Also, besides just helping you guys out, I wanted to be able to make sure I didn't forget how things went back together. So, got that. The other thing I went back and checked, and this timing line right on here lines up with the small nub that sticks out on this shaft. All right, there we have it. Okay, and then a circlip goes in here, at least I think. Alright, so I'm going to pull it out of the fluid now. I'm going to check over my work. So the clip is in the seam all the way around, and this nub on the shaft right here that you probably can't see very well lines up properly with the timing mark in here, which also coincidentally lines up with this timing mark on here. So all of this is back together. This, I guess you would call the core of the fuel pump. I'm going to put it back in there just because I want to keep it suspended in fluid as much as possible. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is put the vane transfer pump in there. Once again, I went back and checked my footage to be sure. This thing goes in with clockwise side up, not counterclockwise. Here's the little vanes that go in it. Here's a piece of dog hair stuck to it. Okay, let's try that again. Down like that. And these ones go down like that. There. Okay, next I'm going to put in this nice fresh new seal here, replace the old one. Now, I'll put this back on. Let's see here. I don't actually remember which direction this goes on, and I don't think I'm going to remember until I get the pump back together. So, if I don't have it in the right direction when I get the pump back together, I can come back and take it off and put it back on in the right direction. So before installing this, you got to notice that there's a roll pin right here. Clearly that's got to line up with this larger opening on this vane pump here. So about right there. Also, these screws at the top are closer together than these ones at the bottom. So that way you know you've got this lined up correctly. Alright, it goes all the way down. That means I got it lined up properly. Not going to torque it down too tight yet. Just going to get it installed so that nothing falls apart while I'm doing the other things. Next thing I think I'll do is put on this seal ring right here. Try to do it carefully so I don't, cut the ring. Okay, Seal ring is in the slot. That's good. All right, so governor weight retainers going in. The way they go in is with this at the rear and this at the front, this at the top. So like this. Okay, and then this rust washer goes in. That. Then this goes in here along with it. Okay, so the one I have it set up now, I got it clamped in the vise. You can see I applied some grease over it, especially over this seal. And that's the outer body of the pump will slide over nice and easy. Over here, I'm carefully and slowly heating up the body of the pump so that it gets a little larger and goes over much more easily. See how that works. Alright, so the next thing I gotta put in here, I gotta take these bolts and put them in so that it stays in place. Now from what I read in the manual, you're not supposed to torque these down until later. So for now I'm just gonna turn them in lightly. Alright, next I'm going to take, let's see if you can see this. I'm going to take this piece. I'm going to install it into this hole. Okay, it seems to move freely enough. So I've been fighting with this for a while. What I've discovered is I had this installed incorrectly. There's two slots in the governor weights here. There's a slot in the top of the governor weight and a slot in the bottom. I had it inside of the top slot when it goes in the bottom slot. So this thing was sticking up just a little too high, which means I could not get this all the way on with I could not get this all the way on with the linkage inside. So I'm going to put this back over. I'm going to test fit the linkage in there and see what comes of it. As you can see here, it's finally in. I got this shaft slid in here, which holds on the timing, or the mixture adjuster here. It interfaces with the governor flywheel and flyweights. And I got it hooked up to here. Throttle should be back together. At least this part is back together now. So last thing before tightening these nuts on, I'm gonna put that's the new O-ring on that side. It's the new O-ring on that side. Now I'm gonna slap the nuts on there and tighten them down. Hopefully we can move on to the next step after that. Okay, sorry for the unorthodox camera angle here. I'm having a really hard time getting my tripod high up enough to actually see that in the vise. But what I'm doing now is I'm going to thread back in this, see if I can focus on it for a second, this plug that goes in the bottom, set the 12.7/16 socket. Got two new rubber seals on it and it goes right here. push it in enough that it contacts on the threads and see about threading it in. Okay, that's tight enough for the moment. Alright everyone, so I went back and looked at my footage to make sure I got this correct. So the long side of this tube piece here sticks out on the clockwise side of the fuel pump, and the short end is on the counterclockwise side of the fuel pump, and this piece sticks in here with the end that has this hole in it sticking out and the other end sticking in. So it's fit into the cam ring on there so that it can move back and forth and change timing like this. You can sort of move the cam ring back and forth like that. I'm not sure you can see that very well, but as you can see there, as I move it back and forth, the cam ring rotates, it changes the timing. So the other thing I found out is, I believe it's this end goes on this side, this end goes on this side. I'm going to put them in. I'm going to look back at my photos that I took earlier to make sure I've got them on the right sides, and then I will update you in a minute. Okay, so after consulting my footage, I know that the end with the little adjuster on it here goes on this side, and the end without it goes on this side. And also you can see that I put the new O-rings on both of these here, so now I can install them. Okay, got those plugs both in. I got the other plug here in, and I put a new O-ring on it as well. I'm not going to torque any of this down real tight yet because I might need to come back and adjust something later. So for now, just got them in finger tight, and I'm going to turn it back around, and I think I'm going to work on the throttle stuff inside here next. Alright, so I put the throttle mechanism back in off camera because I don't have a good place to set up my tripod, but I will try my best to explain this to everyone. So, let me get on the right side of it here. Okay. Got this with the throttle stop on here. The throttle stop goes up against that. And the throttle stop goes on the counter, or the throttle stop goes on the clockwise part of the pump. Sorry for the noise in the background. My neighbors are harvesting corn out there. Here's this. This presses on, when the throttle goes back, it presses on that spring, which presses on the governor weight retainer. There's a little shim right here as well, and there's little shims, little wearable shims in between here on the surface here, and also O-rings on these. And lastly, these two little clips right here go here and here to retain everything. So I'm going to slip those in really quick. Okay, so I pulled the plug out of this end because I wanted to show you guys something. I just spent the last couple hours trying to figure out where a washer and a circlip go, and here you see them. They go on the end of this bolt here. This bolt is the one that threads through the end cap. So that's where those go. I didn't notice that in the manual when I was first putting it back together. That's one of the reasons it's so important to read the manual closely and carefully, and to actually have the right manual for your project. So I'm going to slap that back together with the circlip and the washer on the end of this spring with the bolt through it. Okay, so I now have the throttle linkage on here, and I wrapped it with zip ties to make sure it holds itself closed, which holds the flywheel weights here down in the basket so they can't fall out. Now that I've done that, I don't have to tip it up anymore, which means I took it out of the vise, and I can bring it back down here and work on it the rest of the way. So I have a couple more things left to put back in, including the top here, which needs a new seal. So let's get that in. All right, that's out. There we go. New one's in place. As you can see, this is an electronic fuel shutoff. You turn the key on the tractor and it shuts it off. This solenoid here snaps forward or backward, actually. I'm not entirely sure. Let's see. Anyway, the solenoid moves and presses on the fuel shutoff to shut it off completely. So before I reinstall this, I'm gonna give it a little squirt because this workbench is not the cleanest. That should be pretty good. I don't want to get any extra gunk in there. Alright, let's see. Alright, now I'll do the same thing with these. Make sure they're cleaned out before reinstalling them because this workbench here is not very clean, unfortunately. I almost forgot. I need to remove these old seals and replace them. Alright, to get everything properly torqued down, I'm going to take this over to the vise. I'm going to torque down this, and this. And I think everything else, not quite everything else, has been torqued down. Okay, so it's been a couple weeks. I am back to the project. The reason it's been a couple weeks is because, let's see if I can find it, this shaft for the governor weight retainer arm, I was tightening the bolt, or I was tightening the nut down on one side of it, and it tore the end of the shaft off. So I had to order a new one. I got it here. I didn't end up filming putting it in because I was test fitting it to see if it was the right size. And what ended up happening is I took the new one and just pushed the old one out with it like this, and it popped out the other side, and I didn't even have to take the pump apart to get the new one in. So the new one is now in, and I'm going to move on to the part of putting the injector line hookups on the outside of this, all around each one of these holes here. So what I'm going to do, I believe the instruction manual for rebuilding these tells you to dip them in clean diesel fuel before hooking everything up. So I've got a bucket of clean diesel fuel over here, and just dip them in there, get them wet. Also, it washes off a little bit of grime if there's any on the outside of it. I'm going to put on a new crush washer on each one. The original crush washers were plastic, but these ones fit, so they should be just fine. These ones seem to be aluminum, as far as I can tell. And I have another crush washer on top of that bolt. I'm going to slip it through there. There we go. Then all that I have to do is tighten each one of these in until it presses the crush washers into place. It's going to take a little bit because those crush washers are just exactly the same size as the holes they go into, so they need to be pressed good. So let's try that. Okay, so I got it in there. I just had to tighten it down real good and hard, and it pressed the crush washer in on both sides. So it looks like that's what I'm going to have to do for each one of these all the way around. So I'm going to get to that fast. Okay, so I have the throttle wired forwards. See, I have a little wire there and a zip tie on here. Got the timing mark lined up there about where it was when I took it off. And I'm going to try to fit it to the tractor again now. Okay, took me a couple days to get it back on, but it is back on. Most of the time was spent putting back on all the other stuff I took off, like the coolant hoses back there and the whole charging system and all the fuel lines. But it's back on and I have bled the system. Let us see if this tractor is going to start. Okay, throttle set to minimum. Hey, so I didn't get a video of what actually happened, but here's what I got wrong on the throttle. As you can see, this right here is the metering valve, and this is the lever that the fuel shutoff works back and forth. So this is the governor linkage arm and the governor hook. And what I did was, this part right here, this little shaft here, fits into another piece that sticks out right here. Well, I had it fitted on to the outside edge and it fits into the middle. So when you're fitting those back together, make sure you fit it into the middle instead of on the outside edge like I had it, because having it on the outside edge, it was getting stuck when I tried to change the throttle position, and eventually it got stuck in the off position and I couldn't even start the tractor. So that led me to chase the problem for another couple weeks not realizing what was wrong. So if you're doing this, make sure you get everything put together like that. And to make sure that everything works, once you've got all this stuff back together, before putting the top back on the pump, just move the metering valve back and forth. It should move relatively freely, except that it's under spring pressure. So it should move easily and smoothly, and if it doesn't, then you definitely have a problem. So look out for that, because that's what got me.